Good evening, race fans, and welcome back to TRTM for tonight's coverage of VSR Phoenix Season 8, Round 6 here. It's been a rather wet walk to the gantry this afternoon for what is appearing to be the first wet round of the championship. As ever, I am Regan Clark. You join me in Hoyston Zolder from the Circuit Zolder, founded in 1963 and in the current day just under 2.5 miles and 10 turns of FIA Grade 2. It's bite-sized bliss here, set for round 6 of the championship, following on the trails of what was a fantastic 5th round at Silverstone. We check in here with our drivers in the paddock as we are but moments away from the start of qualifying, running us through the championship standings as we quickly catch on board with the driver to take out into the fray here, VSR Smiler with Aston Martin. In the overall standings, White Doctor continues to lead now by just over 50 points there, 53 as a matter of fact, between himself and Chris MCK08, and then an 18-point gap between Chris MCK08 and Blue Frog in third. The most noticeable change since round 5 then, riding on the successes in Silverstone, just Boris makes his way up to 4th in the championship, with Tommy in 5th, Tyler Vermack in 6th at the moment, with Asenqui 7th, Elite Cassie in 8th position. In 9th is Oatsy, and to round out our overall top 10, we'll get into division standings later, is VSR Grizz with 108 points. It's looking to be a very exciting day of racing then, and looking into our last couple of wins over the course of the last 5 rounds here in Season 8, White Doctor picks up 1 win back in the Red Bull Ring sprint round, but it was just Boris who picks up the last available win in round 5. Quali is underway then, 20 minutes on the horizon, plenty to discuss then in the way of balance of performance and qualifying predictions for today. Let's get on board then with our drivers to get first out into the fray. Looking around the paddock, it's Elite Cassie to take to the field in the number 98. So, looking at those previous race winners, it was just Boris back to the top step with Lamborghini, his 2nd win this season, and Lamborghini's 3rd, courtesy of both Boris and OSR Saturn's exploits. Of course, who could remiss the results of what a fortnight ago in the Red Bull Ring? 2 fantastic results by White Doctor and Asenqui. As we make our way towards the halfway mark of the championship, as we see on the calendar, we're only a single week away before we're back in Great Britain for a 2nd of our sprint rounds at the Snetterton circuit. Last time we were here in Zolder, as a matter of fact, was for the first sprint of Season 7, back during our time when we just started covering these events here on TRTN, back during the opening of VSR Phoenix Season 7. On board then with Elite Cassie, plenty to talk about coming up. As we make our way out of turn 6 then. Of course, with Zolder, it's got quite the esteemed history. Its largest event, of course, the 24 Hours of Zolder, which has ran every single year bar 2020 since 1983. It also holds the NASCAR Euro Series and has done so for 10 years on the trot without failure, and the European Truck Racing Championships Belgian Truck Grand Prix since 1987. So making our way down through to Boulderberg-Harschbelt-Bocht, one of the longest corner names on a FIA registered racetrack. Just Boris then looks to be overtaking Elite Cassie. A little bit of a hold up there between the pair of them with 18.5 minutes. The first wet race then on the horizon, and first quali in the wet here and now, as we head down into Jackie X Box. And another cut of a corner there by Elite Cassie, really struggling, pushing and shoving against the controls here of his BMW. We'll stay on board with Cassie if he's able to give us a full rundown here in Zolder. Making our way then down into Erst, otherwise known as just First, the first corner of the track. Of course, heading now down towards Störenbach corner, turn 2, in a very peculiar shape for this opening sector. Catches plenty of drivers out in the dry. Let's think about what it's going to do for them in the wet. Out through Canal and down towards Lucien Bianchi corner, turn 4. We saw many a incident at this section of the track over the course of both VSR and the TRR Sprint Series, of which was the only other venue we've covered Zolder at. Down into the Kleiner chicane, turn 5. The first of our flying laps with Just Boris and Elite Cassie NL. Down into the Terleman section, so we just exited turn 6 at Butte, now through Terleman-Bocht. Turn 7 accounts for all of these corners you see on the screen at the moment, now as we exit what is fundamentally turn 7. On our way down towards Boulderberg-Harschbelt-Bocht. These two still eerily close to one another. There is still quite a lot in the way of things for this qualifying session, and speaking of, let's finally start talking about that as we stay on board with these two, pulling up our timing charts to see where these two rank up. Looking at our qualifying predictions for today, it is quite a meaty ensemble to dissect. Tyler Vermack predicted at pole position, but admittedly, these data packages come from dry level conditions. So as Cassie and Boris cross the line, it's Boris leading the fray on 1:34.807. Funky Fish makes third. That gets pushed down to fourth by VSR Smiler, who goes third fastest for Aston Martin. Elite Cassie then in a reluctant second. You can see already pushing away at the controls of his BMW. It's now down to third as White Doctor takes pole. Provisional pole, that is, with 16 minutes left to go with Aston Martin. So we'll stay on board the next drivers down towards the line. The 999 and the number 98 appear to be those two. So that'll be our original starting pair, Elite Cassie and Just Boris. Actually, that's my mistake there. We've got them on the other end of the track. We'll get on board with ETE Giles in the 57, who is in fact next towards the line. From 13th goes 8th position then. So, discussing the rest of our qualifying predictions now, you have to really take these with a grain of salt based off the fact that, yes, this did come from dry conditions. As you see there, trouble on the side of the track for the number 7, Boy Shea, already out through Erst Corner. Tyler Vermack predicted at pole, Just Boris 2nd, White Doctor 3rd, VSR Chris 4th, Wishful Winnings 5th, Blue Frog 6th, Elite Cassie 7th, Oatsy 8th, Grizz 9th, Tommy Johansson in 10th. You'll note the spread of Aston Martins up in this section. That's because pound for pound, they're some of the best wet racing machines ACC can provide. They've got plenty of engine maps that complement a wet driving style, a plenty range in precision for these vehicles in slippery and wild conditions such as these. Looking at balance of performance for today then in the data pack it took earlier on this afternoon, it's Lexus still to premier benefit with 24 kilos shed off of the RCF. Aston Martin's V8 Vantage loses 14 kilos, so that will explain why they've had such a sprightly opening start then, with 3 Astons at the moment inside the top 10, that being White Doctor, Tyler Vermack and VSR Smiler. Then further down the line, we have Porsche and Ferrari losing 7 and 3 kilos. Also joining Ferrari will be Audi losing 3 kilos as well. Into the positives, it's plus 3 kilos for Lamborghini, plus 5 for McLaren, plus 12 for Mercedes. And here's the kicker, plus 13 and plus 20 for BMW and Ford. We see Smiler in chat now saying, can qualifying stop now, please? Stop the count, he says. Stop the count. You can hardly blame him. It was a very brisk opening for his qualifying endeavours for Smiler. You can see right now he's in the paddock praying something goes dire for anyone trying to take 9th position off of him right now. It's an Aston Martin showstopper, though, today by White Doctor. Very early precedent being set here, challenging the likes of Just Boris with Lamborghini. Soviet Mario as well just makes his way to the thirds there with McLaren. Wishful Winnings with Ferrari and Elite Cassie with BMW. That is your fundamental big five right now. Aston, Lambo, McLaren, Ferrari, BMW. That could be considered a bit of a nuclear take. I really don't see it that way, as they have had showstopper after showstopper, and also looking to make a mark here. VSR Funky Fish, he's up to 6th there with Porsche. Vermack down in 7th at the moment. Chris MCK08 just down towards the line here, out of turn 10. The Jackie X box, the Jackie X corner, as it's known. Down across the line goes the number 81. Currently 2nd in the championship. He's up to 7th in qualifying by only a few hundredths of a second there. You can see just how narrow the band is between 6th and 8th position. You're talking only in and around about 9 hundredths of a second there. Remarkably close stuff inside the top 10. Right now, checking to see where our next valid time's coming from. It's the number 11, VSR Racing with Audi. You can see there, new driver for today, number 24, Charlie Smithy. Otherwise going by Charlie Smith. We've seen him on a multitude of occasions in the NLRL Sunday League. Now he makes his VSR debut here in round 6 of the championship. Across the line goes racing for 15th. Let's catch on board then with Charlie Smithy. He said he was feeling quite confident about this session today. Of course, this is his VSR debut. He'll be competing alongside Wishful Winnings in the reserve category. Also driving for Ferrari. The number 23 and 24 are our 2 reserves for round 6 of the championship. Making his way down through turn 2 towards turn 3, out of Sturmwacht and through Canal. Charlie Smithy said he felt quite confident coming into this round. It's one of his favourite tracks and even more preferable conditions for such a track. So for the youngster in the number 24, plenty to prove. Quite some hefty cards to be laying on the table this early on Let's see where confidence gets him. With 11 minutes, just under 12 as a matter of fact, left to go. He's out through the Kleiner chicane. We'll catch up with him in a moment's time. You can see a little bit of an upset almost there from the Ferrari on the exit of turn 5. So looking around the field, just Boris has closed the gap up now to under a second to White Doctor. It's 6/10 though. That can seem like an absolute millennium for some of these drivers with how tight qualifying has been over the course of the last 5 rounds. So with wet and wild conditions on the horizon, and so I'm told will not be drying up towards the end of this race. It is going to be wet through and through, absolutely sodden wet for this race here in Zolder. It's going to be an exciting one. We've had plenty to discuss over the course of the championship, and now we'll get on to the discussion of our division standings. Now starting off in bronze, it's VSR Abok with 53 points there, leading by 11 to Jayco 14 in the number 14 Porsche 911, and it's GTR Daily Boy making third there by just 2 points away, and then same story from third to fourth as VSR Dollarup's only 2 points away from him. Then 4 points to VSR Rafing, then 4 points to Shawnee Mac, then 1 point to Smiler, and then 3 points to Aussie. So very, very close from start to finish for our bronze drivers on their promotion campaign for silver. And speaking of getting into the silver category standings, we stay on board with Boris at the moment. It's VSR Oatsley leading the fray by 8 points. So it is very, very close. Even at this point, we're just about heading into the halfway mark of the championship at the moment. You see there a degree of hesitance by just Boris. Pangs of frustration not being able to find that time then to match White Doctor pound for pound for pace. That Aston Martin just seems absolutely lit up with 10 minutes left to go. This could be another pole position for White Doctor. And also, speaking of sprightly performances, Tyler Vermack up to third. Now, Tyler Vermack would be gunning for his first win since round 8 last season when he drove for Ferrari at Bathurst. And this is going to be an exciting story to tell. Of course, he was pitched at pole position, but with conditions massively in favour of the Aston Martin now. He's going to find himself in plenty company for control of that pole position. Right now, I don't think he was expecting to see Boris out in front of him in the qualifying standings, but it's only by about a 10th and 500ths of a second. So very, very close stuff inside the top 3. Anyway, back to the silver standings, and further behind Grizz is Audi Pete, and that's by quite a wide margin there. You're looking at 26 points between the pair of them, the number 44 and the number 77 there, making the last of our podium positions for silver. VSR Antion, who was the bronze champion from last season, finds his way into the middle and in a respectable position right now. He's 10 points ahead of Boyshay and Taz. And it is a joint position there between Boyshay, Taz and Twiglet, all with 39 points, and then only 3 points behind them is VSR Funky Fish, and only 8 points behind them is Tommy Johansson. So up into the Premier Gold category, it's White Doctor still leading the fray there by quite the ways. 53 points is a dominant mark to be made by the Aston Martin. See here just Tyler Vermack getting across the line. Speaking of Vermack, he's inside the top 6 of the championship there, just scraping at the back of it, and behind Tommy and just ahead of SN Queese. Further down the order, though, from first goes second, Chris MCKO8 with 170 points. He finds himself 18 points, as a matter of fact, ahead of Blue Frog to round out those podium positions. Boris is on the rise, though. He made 4 positions up in the championship standings since his victory in Silverstone last Wednesday, and he only looks to keep that momentum rolling. Right now, he's in a confident second position, still looking to challenge here by the end of the championship. We've still got just over half of the championship left to go, which will be seeing the dead halfway mark next Wednesday in between our 2 races at Snetterton Circuit. It's going to be a very exciting second half we're leading into here. With 8 minutes left to go, we're still on board with Tyler Vermack. We'll get on board now with the number 54 on its way to the line. We can catch them just before they make the checkered line to finish off their lap. It's White Doctor looking to extend the margin from a 1:33.5, and he does a 1:33.0, so half a second found by the Aston Martin. That is remarkable stuff by White Doctor. He's entered this paddock practically unknown for Season 8, and he is an absolute powerhouse in that 54 Aston Martin. That is absolutely jaw-dropping. Mouths simultaneously across the paddock are agog with pace like that. Remarkable stuff then. Catching up with the driver we spoke on earlier, if the cameras will pan across to him here, just out through the Boulderberg, Harshveld, Bochten, Jochen Rindbock, turns 8 and 9. Heading down to 10-10 is Charlie Smithy from the reserve category. Let's see what he can do down towards the line then. Quite a competitive field he's up against. But you can see already scratching towards the back of a top 10. It's an impressive start then. Entering this paddock unknown. Sadly on that lap doesn't make his way to a top 10, but he's making gradual improvements. Could we be seeing this new driver into the top 10 by the end of qualifying today? Well, he's got 6.5 minutes to make true on that idea. He's a driver inside the top 10 at the moment, and one that found himself in the centre of a little bit of controversy back in Silverstone with his collision with Elite Cassie. It's Blue Frog in the number 61, a very competent fighter on his day. He'll be really against the ropes there with balance of performance heavily damaging Ford's performance. 20 kilos added to the already monstrously large Mustang. Blue Frog's really going to have his hands full. You can see right now dancing in the rain around turn 10 on his way down towards the line. Yellow flags do fly because of the cars in the pit lane, so no real threat on the road surface itself. After that last lap, it's a new personal best of 1:34.867, but he's still in a reluctant 8th position, struggling to find the pace ahead of Chris MCK8. He has to find dead on 0.5 of a second there. Not too far away from him, on the same stretch of the track, is White Doctor then, our current pole sitter with Aston Martin by 1.1 seconds. You can see that as they start to gain more and more confidence, do expect to see the same roughly from Tommy Johansson and VSR Smiler. As right now, Aston Martin seem to be the manufacturer to be coming into this round of the championship. Their car just seems so unfazed by the, no doubt, incredibly wet conditions. Right now, track temperatures, 23 degrees, ambient temperature, 19 degrees. So somewhat of a damp, muggy heat in and amongst the rainfall. It'll be rapidly cooling the surface temperature of the track, getting a little bit further down beneath the surface will still be where a lot of that core temperature sits on these FIA Grade 2 circuits. Very similar to their slightly more high-tech Grade 1 brethren. So on his way out of Turleman, down towards Boulderberg Harshbeld to turn 8, White Doctor had a little bit of an upset. You can see that even when he's pushing, and pushing he is hard, that Aston is not fighting him back at all. It seems to be gliding its way with such elegant motion. It's flowing almost like liquid around every corner on the track. The Aston Martin V8 Vantage, dare I say, might be the perfect machine for the job today. What can just Boris do then to upset the balance currently enforced by Vermac and Doctor's performance? Across the line to not an extension of time. We can see Boris is a little bit up the road from them as a new manufacturer joins the ring there inside the top 3. It's Soviet Mario with McLaren. Now the staple house name in the McLaren 720S is not to go tarnished through this championship. There are still plenty of drivers left in the fray willing to give it a very good go in what has been ACC's most dominant class of machinery. The 720S Evo, when it was introduced, was a free update and took the competition by storm. It is a revered and sometimes eyed vehicle for just how effective of a racing machine it has been. You can see he's within 0.09 of a second to second position right now. Had it not been for the absolute world-class performance we're observing thus far from White Doctor, I would say this is an eerily close qualifying session on our hands. Had it not been for just that next step up for performance, this would have been one of the best qualifying sessions I've ever seen. That's not to take away from just how close things are inside that top 10 with present company excluded of our current pole sitter. Let's see if we can narrow the gap down, courtesy of Season 7's champion, Just Boris, down towards the line. He's got a long way to go here before he can be in the looks for Season 8. He's got quite the road to travel on. Doesn't find an improvement, but with minutes ticking by now into the final available laps of today, maybe 2, perhaps even 3 if he really digs deep now in the 999. Could this qualifying session be for naught? Soviet Mario crossing the line then. He needs to find 900ths to get second position. You can see his momentum hasn't stumped, but he didn't find an improvement on that last lap. And it has not stopped him 1 second there as the track continues to be bed in ever so slightly here. Now these drivers are really struggling against the rainfall. You can see there is a noticeable dry line, but with rain being as heavy as it is not going to be particularly easy, even with all hands on deck, to maintain that dry line. It could be a different story heading into the race, but you can see where it's quickly getting flooded back in. And for drivers, that means that the ones furthest up the order, so your White Doctor, your Boris, your Soviet, your Vermac, your Giles, are going to be struggling on those opening couple of laps as they're the ones carving the way in. The drivers further down the top 10 will be able to reap some of the benefit after a few laps, if not off of the first lap here. This is really a bit of a game of who dares wins with these drivers, as wet conditions throw a very unique challenge in the direction of any driver, no matter the skill bracket. What it means for us, though, here in the commentary box is we are assured a very exciting race today. We just see here with just Boris down towards the line. GTR Twiglet was in front of him there for 9th position. Boris does close the gap, but not by enough, and this is his last available chance to have a go at pole position. Now, this is going to be a very exciting final lunge. Tyler Vermack does go ahead of him, but only 0.02 of a second. It is a qualifying shootout between Aston Martin and Lamborghini here for that second position, as it seems no one in their right mind could potentially challenge the dominant qualifying performance put on display by the number 54. It is absolutely remarkable stuff. Could we be witnessing an Aston Martin 1-2? Well, Tyler Vermack throws the towel in on this lap. Let's see what Boris is capable of. He needs to find 200ths, just under, as a matter of fact, 200ths of a second. I think that's about, looking at that there, trying to do the rough maths, about 108 thousandths in order to equalise here on Vermack. Wouldn't hold my maths to it. Only got a 5 in GCSE maths. So on our way down through Tournament, down towards Balderberg Harshbelt Bocht. Shawnee Mack ahead of him there. Fortunately, just far enough away from Boris to not cause him any grief here in the final moments of qualifying. What can the Lamborghini do then? It is an infinitesimal gap between himself and second place. It seems that first place is really a bit of a pipe dream at the moment, but it's looked pretty brisk, all things considered, by the 999. Down through Jackie Ick's corner, turn 10. Final run to the line then, checkered flag for qualifying. What can Boris do as he crosses the line? It's second, but he's off by pole by 0.4 of a second. That is still not to take away from just how razor thin that the top 10 has kept it all qualifying long. Let's check in then with the, I believe the number 20, looking at it here, 26 is to the line. That's Soviet Mario. Will he find his way to a top 3 for the start? Sadly, not this time around. Next to the line on a valid flying lap is VSR Rafing, making his way out through turn 8 and 9, Balderberg, Harshwell, Bocht and Jochen Rindt Bocht, down towards Jackie Ick's Bocht. Rafing to the line. Next will be the number 23 of Wishful Winnings, in 10th position at the moment. Audi's number 11 then to the line from 18th, remains 18th. So on board almost immediately there, snapping over to one of our 2 reserve drivers for today. Now, we talked at length about Charlie Smithy on his debut here. Wishful Winnings has been no slouch from that reserve category, though he's not classified into any one specific length of the championship besides the overall. He's definitely been able to make a very solid mark here. And from 10th position, he goes 6th fastest. That is quite the shocker at the end of qualifying today. Our last shock then in store potentially from Abok, but he calls it quits there after a little bit of a far run into turn 10. What a qualifying session that has reared up to be. We'll be on towards the discussion of the news and the discussion of our grid for round 6 of the championship in a moment's time. That was really quite something to behold then. So on pole position for today, the number 54, Aston Martin of White Doctor. Can he elevate this to his 2nd win this season and continue to open the gap on his championship lead here? Right now leading by quite a ways, I should say, 53 points. To give some example of the stakes here, 223 points is what White Doctor has, and it's 146 for what Boris has. He made 4 positions in the last round just gone after winning at Silverstone. He's going to need to consistently deliver on these knockout after knockout after knockout performances if he is to be within even a shout of Season 8. But never say never on that, and he is definitely pulled the reins back in from what was a lacklustre start to the championship for last season's champion. And in the face of new competition, this could be where our 2 titans meet, as it was written. With Tyler Vermaak and Soviet Mario making for an incredibly competitive second row, this is surefire to be a very exciting race on our hands today. It is going to be quite the juicy one to pick apart. We'll be on to the discussion of our full grid in a moment's time. Kicking us off then on the discussion of news, we have 4 articles of news today, 2 of which coming from the Indianapolis 500. Alex Palou wins the 2025 Indy 500, and that's his 5th win with Chip Ganassi Racing of 6 races in this season's IndyCar Championship. And also in IndyCar, Prema and Andretti Global were issued fines and suspensions for technical violations following the 2025 Indianapolis 500. They're not the only ones to have run into trouble with the scrutineers. I think all of us do remember what happened with Penske in the days leading up to the Indy 500 this week just gone. In MotoGP, it would be Marco Bezzecchi and Aprilia winning in the 2025 British Grand Prix to the shock of the entire paddock after capitalising on a better tyre strategy and a technical breakdown by Yamaha's Fabio Quartararo. They took home an exciting win at the 2025 British Grand Prix this weekend just gone. And our last bit of news today comes from Formula One as Morocco announces its interest as a Formula One venue. The current plans are in and around the $1.2 to $2.2 billion range right now for the construction of an FIA Grade 1 circuit 20 kilometres south of Tangier. If it is to be open, it will become the first venue in continental Africa to hold a Formula One race in the 21st century, with South Africa's Kyalami holding races throughout the 20th century. Right now it is still awaiting permission for construction, but with how open Formula One seems to have been to get new locations on the calendar, I see this one potentially happening. They're one of three venues, I should say, in continental Africa to have tried their hand here. This one looking possibly the most promising. So, onto the grid for round 6 today, and it was an exciting qualifying session, bringing us into another pole position by White Doctor on a knockout 4/10 of a second gap to last season's champion of Just Boris in the number 999. Tyler Vermaak makes 3rd with Soviet Mario 4th, ETE Giles inside the top 5 just ahead of Elite Cassie NL to make an extra exciting 3rd row. We are not short of action here going down into Erst on this race today. Blue Frog and Chris MCK 7th and 8th with GTR Twiglet and VSR Smiler inside the top 10. Charlie Smithy on his first race in VSR makes 11th and ahead of Funky Fish and Grizz in 12th and 13th. Hin Hin Pappy in 14th position with Tommy Johansson rounding out the top 15. VSR Abok and VSR Rafings 16th and 17th, Shawnee Mac 18th, Voyshay 19th, Jaco 20th and Wishful Winnings, our second of our 2 reserve drivers, starting from the back in 21st. So we'll be staying on board with White Doctor as he takes us away on the start of our formation lap here in what looks to be a very soggy Zolder. We'll stay on board with the Aston Martin. We'll be back in just a moment's time, taking us away then. Your pole sitter for today, the number 54. So strategy will be slightly more lenient today with those wet tyres fitted to the cars. Now they've got considerably longer lifespan just by nature of the fact that they are, for the duration of this hour-long race on the horizon, completely water-cooled, meaning they'll have a little bit more grip overall between changes. Of course, what grip is there to play with in a wet race such as this? It is going to make a very, very difficult set of conditions for our drivers to go up against their first wet race this season. So definitely a lot to take into account here. This is going to be an experience game, if I had to imagine here. More often than not do we get to see the experienced drivers really get to come out of their shells towards further positions down the order. They're able to just consistently bang out good times in the wet. Right now, that is just an ultra competitive top 10. Had ever I seen one, really. And that seems to be a very consistent theme over the course of Season 8. We've seen these absolute all-star lineups for VSR inside the top 10 at all times. It has never been a dull start to a race here in VSR Phoenix. From Season 7 all the way to where we are right now, heading towards the middle of Season 8. We have not gone bored as the lights went green in any of these races. So out through Turleman. Now there are plenty, and I really do mean plenty, of opportunities for this race to go wrong for anyone on the grid. This track is very, very small, if it's not already readily apparent. 2.5 miles. It is a pint-sized, compressed version of its bigger brother, the Circuit de Spa-Francorchamps. It's the second most popular circuit in Belgium. And it has traded the more grandiose nature of Spa for tight, technical racing, which in conditions like these is a recipe for disaster. Let's see how our drivers navigate this Herculean task on the horizon. White Doctor is almost being overtaken there by Boris as he's leading up the charge. It'll be White Doctor getting ahead of him there. It'll be to the inside at Ernst corner for round 6 of the championship. Then we've got to run down to the line here in wet and wild conditions. An hour on the clock here in round 6 of VSR Phoenix Season 8. Without further ado, we are green and racing here in Zolder. A great start by Just Boris, looking to try and go around the outside almost immediately on White Doctor to try and snatch that leading position off of our current pole sitter. The 54, though, looks to defend out through turn 1. In through turn 2, you can see the Lamborghini has not wasted any time to get himself back on the inside line again. Looking further down the order, you can see right now it's nothing too crazy, nothing too elbows out from anyone in the field. We can see Wishful Winnings had a very spry start as he's already up there with Shawnee Mack and Hin Hin Pappy. Tommy Johansson having dropped behind the Ferrari there on his way round Lucien Bianchi. Vermack right now clinging to third. Soviet right behind him. Boris and White Doctor in front. We can see side by side there. That was Chris MCKO8 and ETE Giles. The pink Ferrari and the turquoise McLaren were having a very good go of things around the Kleiner chicane. Speaking of, let's get on board with these two. Chris MCKO8 holds on to his position for the time being. Ahead of him there, Blue Frog and Elite Cassie before we get up in towards our top 4 as we make our way around turn 7. Right now, I'm pleasantly surprised to see such a clean start to this race so far. You know, so far so good. Touch wood, cross your fingers. You can never be too certain about these things, especially on a track like Zolder. I've seen worse things happen in the dry. But really, to get all of our drivers, all 21 drivers for this round of the championship, up through the track for one lap there with... Oh, I spoke way too soon. That's Funky Fish in the background. Oh, no. It has all gone horribly wrong. What on earth happened there? Let's get that on the replay. It was just as we were coming out here. This is turn 9, Jochen Rindbocht. And you can see there, looks like trouble, and he's up on his side there. That was quite a tank slapper. So definitely spoke a little bit too soon on that one. That's commentator's curse. That I deserve that for speaking up. ETE Giles versus Chris MCKO8. Let's stay on board then for 7th. Out through Lucien Bianchi corner. You can see up ahead Tyler Vermack looking to fight with Just Boris. That could be one to watch in a moment's time. The Aston Martin versus the Lamborghini. Right now, these two who on last lap got side by side through the Kleiner chicane through turn 5. Right now are front to back on their way to Butte Corner. We see Charlie Smithy's on the charge there up against VSR Smiler. Is he looking already at a chance of a top 10 here? You see in the background the blue Ferrari versus the grey and yellow Aston. The Aston still holding on to 10th position. We'll be getting on board with that in a moment's time. We're still on board our fight for 7th as that starts to diffuse into what looks to be a fight for 6th on the horizon as Blue Frog drops into frame then for these two drivers, ETE Giles and Chris MCKO8. Out through the same fated corner there that took Funky Fish out of this race in the number 982 Porsche. You see very nearly as we saw but a glimmer of the blue of his Ferrari. That was Charlie Smithy running into a bit of trouble. He's now down to 12th and alongside fellow reserve driver Wishful Winnings, who I must say has had an absolute blinder of a start. Already scratching his way towards the back of a top 10. From the back of the grid, no less, he has really navigated that with such expertise. We'll catch up with Giles in a while's time here. We check back up into our top running order of cars. Right now, we look to be seeing an imminent fight for third position. We see just momentary troubles out through the Dusty Jackie Xbox, turn 10. That's for VSR Racing, right now in 20th. Let's get on board, though, in our fight for third position between Soviet Mario and Tyler Vermack. Trying to get on board the attacking car's perspective here, just so we've got a little bit of a better view of the state of affairs here. Let's get on board with the number 26, Soviet Mario, now clawing for a podium position here in Belgium. Up through Turleman, you can see that the Aston is a little bit more rigid than the McLaren, but that serves him to great benefit there. There's very few concerns in the way of stability for Vermack. The number 11 of VSR Racing runs into even more trouble this time through turn 3 and 4. Canal and Lucien Bianchi. Soviet running things wide then through Boulderberg Harschfeldbocht. So is that a little bit of a loss of his fight for the podium there? And that has quickly invited Elite Cassie in for the fight of fourth position. Let's stay on board then from Soviet's perspective. Now the defending car in the fight for fourth as we exit turn 10. Now Elite Cassie, when really pushed for it, is pound for pound one of the best pack fighters in this series. And same story for the driver right behind him right now, also holding up a position, that being in sixth, the number 61 of Blue Frog. Those two came together at Silverstone last round. As it really does seem to be a case where they tend to repel off one another. Two of almost fundamentally the same style of driver. They're very elbows out when the time calls upon it, but it's this measured control of things that they've got by the absolute bucketful 99% of the time. The moment things get hairy, they're not really too shy to start throwing the gloves off and getting really in on this. Already racing into the pit lane, number 11 and the number 24. Oh no, that's going to be Charlie Smithy. Number 24, newcomer for today, already into the pits. We've been watching on board here with the fight of fourth position. We've missed out there on what went on for the number 24 Ferrari. Out through turn 7. Then becomes turn 8. You can see behind them Blue Frog and Chris MCKO8 side by side. You can see the Mustang sliding his way out. He's not going to be happy with that one because surfing him on through is ETE Giles. Let's get on board with the fight currently erupting behind us. We see here just quickly, Just Boris now separated by White Doctor by nearly 2 seconds after 3 laps of racing. Let's get on board though. What is unmistakably absolute melee going on behind them. In 6th position backwards. Chris MCKO8 currently leading the fray, but we're going to get on board with ETE Giles as the driver stuck plumb in the middle of what looks to be a very exciting fight inside our top 10. So back on board with ETE Giles. Behind him is Blue Frog. In front of him is Chris MCKO8. Now we are not starved for good and exciting performances out of these three over the course of the season. So to see all three of them in the same place with very little interference from in front or behind is an absolute treat. Stay on board then, the fight for 6th. See much better exit of turn 5. How is that going to line Giles up on his exit of turn 6? Round Butte curve, down into Turleman. Right now, Rafing, whether he meant to or not, is actually in the way a little bit there. With damage, no less, on the number 11. So how will traffic this early on in the race interfere with their fight? You can see he's immediately out of the way, and it's really knocked the wind out of anyone's sails. Up the order as well, you can see what looks to be a quickly progressing affair for the top 5 positions. Soviet Mario and Elite Cassie getting closer and closer to Tyler Vermack at the moment. That looks to be a mirror match of what's going on behind them here. 3 cars in contention for 1 position. On a very narrow track, no less. It's a recipe for an incident. It's really a case of when and not if. That's no disrespect to these drivers' ability. It is simply the nature of racing at Zolder here, is eventually someone is going to fly too close to the sun. It could be the ones you don't expect. And that's their race done. Number 11 in trouble again. Back into the pits goes VSR Racing. That could be the end of his race today. He's already had far too many issues to recover. Right now, we're still on board with Giles. who looks to now be slowly slipping from the control of a fight for 6th. May have to start considering his odds here in a fight for 7th. All the meanwhile behind them, we can see the emerging presence of Wishful Winnings, who is now up past GTR Twiglet and up to 9th. Now he's already gunning there for driver of the day. As in the background, through all of these battles we've seen thus far, he has been just looming yonder the horizon. Very soon, on the pace that he's been on, he'll be an active part of this fight for 6th position. You've really got to hand it to him there. He has reined in that Ferrari 100-fold to put himself in that position right now. In very trying conditions, no less. Right now, we can see, though, in what looks to be a bit of a curious case, the sky is getting brighter out. Now, we were told it was going to be a wet race through and through, and we still are under the belief that it's going to be one, but with the slight unpredictable nature of weather control in ACC, it is not off of the table entirely for it to dry out by the end of this race, and that would definitely throw a wrench in the works for strategy today, as drivers would be having to wrestle with whether or not they stay on these wet compound tyres or if they see it appropriate to get back onto the dries with a noticeable dry line paved in. Now, that all depends on when the rain stops, and you can see the sky is definitely now, it's not just a trick of the lights, it is getting brighter out. And this could prove to be a very exciting turn of events where we were under the strict belief that it was going to be wet from start to finish. We may have to start adjusting our mindset here coming into this race. And that'd be not only us, but the drivers as well. So we'll catch up with these guys in a moment's time here. Things don't look to be progressing too quickly, but speaking of progressing quickly, you can see squeezed into the eye of a needle here is this fight for 3rd. Tyler Vermack has just got to keep his nerve here. He knows right now, in the current position that he's in, he's not able to challenge Boris or White Doctor ahead, both of whom separated from each other by 4 seconds either side of it. He's now going to have to start focusing on the drivers mounting behind him to try and have a go for a podium here in Zolder. And it's quite an ensemble crowd because all of that pushing and shoving that's been going on inside the top 10 is actually squeezing these 2 3-car battles into the possibility of a 6-car battle. Now, that is unprecedented in VSR. That may be one of the largest potential battles we're seeing on the horizon here. Fingers crossed that things get anywhere near as close to that becoming a reality today. 48 minutes left to go then. And I must say, for what was predicted to be a very chaotic opening to this race, we're only really given a few, if any, surprises at all. Saying chiefly for that big wipeout on the opening lap by the 982, and also just the mythical drive at the moment by Wishful Winnings. As a matter of fact, let's see if we can get on board with Wishful Winnings, carving his way out through turns 2 and 3. Now to turn 4. It has really been quite a lightning drive then by the 23. He's 4 seconds out at the moment from a fight of 8th position. Don't rule that out, because if getting from 21st, or 20th, I should say, he did start in 20th and 21st towards that back row there. Starting in 21st and getting a 9th was as easy as that. It's been 7 laps and he's already in it. Really, I would not rule it out that he can make a few more positions up before the checkered flag, as it has really been a proper leap of faith drive by the 23 today. See Smiler having to cut the chicane there. That could open up the possibility for a move by Hin Hin Pappy. You can see he's just too far behind to capitalise. He'll be having potential words with the stewards there, seeing Smiler cut the track and still hold his position. Heading down towards turn 8. The Aston is going to have slightly dirty tyres from the gravel and Tellerman. Throw his confidence ever so slightly here, but we'll be getting on board with what looks to be a fight here between Giles and Blue Frog, both of whom having to slide their cars around Jackie Ick's corner. Let's stay on board here. This is an exciting progression into the battle of 7th. We'll be on board with the attacking car then, the Blue Frog, number 61. Running things wide, though, out through turn 3 at Canal. Or turn 2 at Sternwacht, I should say. Now at just exiting turn 3 and into turn 4, you can see that gap, all of this pushing and shoving between the pair of them, has dropped a second away to Wishful Winning. So he may become a part of a fight for 8th position very, very soon here. You can see that 20 additional kilos on the Mustang is not doing Blue Frog any favours. We see, oh my word, That jump was absolutely brutal. Over the Kleiner chicane. This was from the number 57 in front as we were discussing the number 61. Just caught a little too much sausage curb there on that second part. 1, 2, 3, 4 bounces there. Very nearly into a blind spin. That is a little bit nasty for ETE Giles. I don't think he'll be making the same mistake twice here, as we're nearly a quarter of an hour into this race. We'll be getting a look at the overall standings, and there are quite a few to discuss in that top 10. We can see one right now just lingering around in the back of this fight for 7th position between Blue Frog and ETE Giles. Right now in the pit lane, the number 4 and the number 44. 2 cars currently in the pit lane. Shawnee Mack just making his way out is the 44. That being VSR Grizz. See, it seems to be this corner here in particular, turn 2 at Sternwacht, that seems to catch both of these drivers out. It's a very awkward parabolic line that they have to take. It requires a lot of finesse, a lot of accuracy, something that they can't get in wet conditions. So out through Lucien Bianchi, he's really having to kick the back end away there. Supercars-esque drive we're seeing on display by the Blue Frog, having to rein in as much performance as he can get with that 20 kilo ballast. And another big bounce, and this time a half spin. So we were genuinely surprised there to see ETE Giles repeating his mistakes from the last lap just gone. Getting a look at that as we head now down in towards the Kleiner chicane. ETE Giles is back on track, but down into 12th position. And again, just more bounces, and this time he's not been anywhere near as lucky. We're away from the Blue Frog, now on board with ETE Giles, the 57, who lost out through turn 5, nearly losing out again through Turleman at turn 7. He's got quite a way to go here before the end of today's race, but he's got quite the comeback drive to form now, as we're about 14 or so minutes from our peak time for pit stops. Of course, one mandated pit stop back on for today's race. Strategy's definitely been a bit of an oddball one, working with such pressing conditions as these. See here, Soviet Mario now in 4th. Sandwiched in between himself and the car in 3rd. Tyler Vermack is VSR Grizz, and the number 44, who, as a matter of fact, since exiting the pits, has had absolute droves of performance. You can see it is looking noticeably drier. So, dare I say it, I think we may very well be back into dry conditions for today's race. So it was an exciting wet start. You can see Grizz clearly has gone in for dry tyres, and it's paying him tenfold, because heading down into turn 5, he's unlapped Tyler Vermack like he was standing still. I want to get a quick look at it here as we look at the overall standings. White Doctor leading from just Boris, Tyler Vermack 3rd, Soviet Mario 4th. You can see that fight looking to kick off in a moment's time here. They are right on each other for 3rd position. McLaren versus Aston Martin. That could be McLaren versus Aston Martin and BMW very soon, with Elite Cassie in 5th, catching up to the pair of them out through Turleman. Chris MCKO8 in 6th with Blue Frog 7th. Wishful Winnings 8th, GTR Twiglet 9th, and rounding out the top 10 VSR Smiler in Hinpapi in 11th. Tommy Johansson 12th, Abok 13th, Giles into the pits then. So an emergency call by ETE Giles into the pit lane, number 57, pits for potentially dry tyres, as we've seen there from Grizz. This could be the call. Yes, that sky is getting very, very bright now. I think the rain is starting to subside quite a ways there. The drivers aren't having to use their wipers anywhere near as much as they were on the start of that race. The track looking noticeably very dry. Further down the order then, Jayco 14th, 16th, VSR Grizz 17th, Shawnee Mack 18th, 3 DNFs among them we saw was Charlie Smithfield, his first race. So let's get a look on board then with White Doctor. Just pulling up our weather charts here as we try and check out what's going on. So yes, we're in dry conditions right now, but the pressing factor is it is back into wet racing in about 10 to 30 minutes time. Now, of course, with 42 minutes left in the race, it means we'll end this race in the same conditions we started in. For the drivers right now, this is the push stint. Every ounce counts in this section of the race, with the dry conditions still absolutely chief among the concerns for drivers on the track at the moment. now is the best possible time to push, knowing drivers will be gunning for that one-stop strategy with only one mandated stop on the charts. This could be a very, very rare showcase, a potential two-stopper for a one mandated stop race. Now, that widely depends on what drivers are thinking of doing today. We see White Doctor, who definitely started the race on those wet tyres right now, holds the lead by 6.5 seconds. We'll actually be looking here also inside the podium at Vermac v Soviet, just down through turn 10 there. Doesn't kick off into anything too crazy. You can see, compared to how we started this race off, we are in broadly different conditions now, with drivers nowhere near having a slide out through turn 10, and down into turn 1 there was just so much more grip up to play with here. So through turns 1, 2 and 3, the drivers will actually be concerned at this leg of the race over burning their tyres out, as core heat in those wets is going to continue to rise with no water to cool them down. And still looking at it here, we're about 10 minutes out from when a good 80 to 90% of our drivers will be considering a move into the pits at any given moment. Now, that window has fluctuated massively over the course of every single race. We've had the mandated pit stop in. The only ones that do not count towards that would have been the endurance races from Season 7 or the sprint races that we've had in Season 7 and Season 8, to where there is either modified or different entirely strategy involved. Sometimes as well with the sprints as well, no strategy whatsoever. Still see here in the fight for third, it is absolutely hair's width thin between the McLaren and the Aston right now. We're still on board with Tyler Vermac as he fends off Soviet Mario, but for how much longer can he handle the heat of the 26? Heading down towards Boulderberg Harshbelt Bocht at turn 8. They forged away ahead of Elite Cassie, but any one dicey move could spell doom for their chances of third today. This is the last of those available podium positions. The next car up being Just Boris, who is nearly 10 seconds up the road. Out through turn 10, a little cut over the second part of the Jackie X chicane. Soviet's going to be to the inside on the exit. It'll be to the outside at turn 1. So how does he play this with the cards stacked against him? We'd be trying for around the outside in the McLaren, knowing he's got better rotation on paper than the Aston Martin, but on much less favourable tyres, let's put it. On our way through turn 2, Vermac's going to give him the space, holding the middle of the track, surfing it all the way to the outside, then to try and loop things back across his nose at turn 3. And he's done that very, very nicely. That was pitch perfect stuff by the 94 to hold on to third. So out through turn 4 we go, down towards turn 5. Now, we'll get on board with Soviet. And just quickly see here, it looks to be a mirrored battle for 5th. This is Elite Cassie versus Chris MCKO, 8.3 of a second between the pair of them. But our focus right now is the car in 4th position. We just quickly see Shawnee Mack against Abok and Tommy Johansson, I should say. We're on board with Soviet Mario in the 26. Right now fighting for the last of those podium positions. Now, he's definitely given it a very good go, but Vermac has had a very solid defensive performance. You end up in these dead stalemates here. You can see right behind them, Chris MCKO8 versus Elite Cassie. That looks to be kicking off in a moment's time. Chris tries for around the outside, so it appears. Elite Cassie holds his ground against the Ferrari. We'll actually be looking in with these two as it's looking ever closer than the drivers we were just watching on board with. Let's see if we can catch them just before things go nuclear. And a fake out into the pit lane goes Elite Cassie. So he's abandoned Chris to be by his lonesome there. Yes, you can have top 5, but I'll be back for it later, he says. 37 minutes left to go. Things already starting to rear up into a strategy battle with differing conditions up for grabs today. Now the wipers are back on for Chris MCKO8. This means one of two things. Either we can't see that it started raining or he doesn't realise it stopped raining. Out through turn 2, I think it's the latter. Right now we can't see any droplets on the windscreen. The sky's looking quite bright and we're not projected for rain for another 10 minutes. So back on board our fight for third. Let's get back on board with Soviet Mario, the attacking of 2. We watched for a while there with Vermac in his defensive masterclass against the McLaren. Now we get to watch the other side of this fight from the perspective of the attacking car. Back into the fight for third then. could sense there from the throttle inputs and the braking inputs from the McLaren, there's a little momentary moment of panic by Soviet Mario down through Turleman, where under the shift of weight there in the middle of his car, it wanted to rotate more than he wanted it to do. There was that very brief moment, I'd say for maybe about 4, maybe 5 tenths of a second, that the car was about to go into a dead spiral, and he caught it perfectly. Admittedly, it shoved him a few tenths behind Vermack, but he gains all of that back there just by having the better of 2 lines through turn 10. Now, this is the same place that he was able to stage, at least at the start of his first attempt, to take this position from Vermack. He seems to be a ways away this time around. He'd be stuck in behind him at Ernst. You can see Vermack, though, with tremendous understeer. Nothing he can do but wrestle the car back onto the track there, now behind Soviet Mario, who inherits 3rd position. Thank you very much. Thank you kindly. So out through turn 2 and 3, out through Canal, towards Lucien Bianchi. Now, that is an enraged comeback performance by Vermack. He has not lost any ground since losing that position, as he's still right on the rear of the McLaren in 3rd position right now. 35 minutes left to go then. We're approaching that Zone 4 strategy, that one mandated pit stop. The drivers are really going to have to play a bit of a game here, gambling to pick that right tyre with rain on the horizon. It was out through that sort of second part there of Turleman where we saw that over-rotation creep in on the 26. Seems to have found his footing, though. Now that he's out of the dirty air of the Aston Martin, he's able to peel the gap open to 0.8 of a second there over the course of 1 lap. That's very nicely done by Soviet, but bear in mind, Vermack is not an easy driver to shake off. 1 mistake and he's back with you. 2 mistakes and he's ahead. You can see the rain starting to creep back in, so no deviation away from the wet tyres for our drivers. It's only going to get worse from here. We'll catch up with these two later on, as we do have, looks to be some fairly close stuff going on around the grid, especially here out of Turleman and down towards Boulderberg-Harshbelt Bog to turn 8. VSR Smiler right now sandwiched in between Twiglet and Tommy Johansson for 9th position. Now he'd be gunning for 8th there off of the Mercedes we saw last season behind the wheel of the Lexus. Smiler guns for the pit lane, though. Here's our leading Aston Martin, gunning for his 2nd win this season. Aston Martin's 2nd win in Season 8. Bear in mind, he has really carved out a unique chapter for Aston Martin Racing here in VSR Phoenix. He gave them their 1st win as a manufacturer in over a season and is now gunning for their 2nd off of what was a fantastic qualifying performance, of which he has elevated into an effortless charge from 1st. He has gone unparalleled for his performance today. We see just trouble there for Boy Shea out through turn 8. Fortunately gets back onto the track with no issues at all just as he makes to turn 9. White Doctor, though, still questioning what his odds are here for a run into the pit lane. Seems very, very controlled. Very little struggle on display there. I'd say the only time he has really been put under any kind of pressure was at turn 1 at the start of the race. And that's about 80% of your race done on most accounts. I think it was something mentioned in the BTCC commentary that sort of rings very true with a lot of these races. If you can get through the first lap, that's 80% of your race over. And now that he's out of the forest here, he's just been able to sort of let his guard down just ever so slightly, but we are not seeing what some could say is a tepid performance by White Doctor. He is still absolutely planting that Aston, but he's in just this perfect flow state to where he's made very few, if any, mistakes this race so far. He's not put a foot wrong. Really, strategy be the only thing that could undo him right now. See here, Tyler Vermack in 4th. Dropping quite a ways away now from Soviet Mario. Now in between the pair of them, fellow Aston Martin VSR Smiler. After we saw him take his run into the pit lane, he's back out, currently 16th. Checking in here with Tommy Johansson, just quickly checking on the exit of the Kleiner chicane. No issues for Chris MCK08 there. Tommy Johansson v GTR Twiglet. Now, Aston Martin versus Mercedes. These are sister cars. Now, they don't share a chassis, nor do they share a development office, but they do share one thing in common. That's the engine. Both the AMG GT and the Vantage used an AMG M177 4-litre twin-turbo V8. So they have the same beating heart under the bonnet, in the same position on the car. It's this sort of Anglo-Germanic marriage we've seen here between Aston Martin Racing and AMG that has created the perfect monster. That is the V8 Vantage and the AMG GT. Just absolute powerhouses in GT3. Johansson giving it a very good go then. He's timed that to perfection to put himself on the inside of the run down towards turn 8. What can Tommy Johansson do on his way to the line? GTR Twiglet runs it wide. He'll be up in a 7th. Very, very measured stuff there by the number 71. Held his nerve as conditions continue to worsen. Behind them there, ETE Giles already back on the charge after taking his pit stop. It has not slowed him down a piece there. Twiglet very nearly collides with the back of Tommy Johansson on his way into the pit lane. So Aston Martin really, ironically, with no real presence of the sun on account of the fact that it's raining and overcast, are having a time in the sun right now. It has been a phenomenal race for all of the drivers for the Aston Martins. Right now we can see here quite a few drivers have already made their way in. Among them Tyler Vermack, Wishful Winnings, GTR Twiglet. We also see VSR Abok on his way in. So a lively pit lane here at the 30-minute mark just as we get towards the halfway of this race. We see right now Hin Hin Papi kept company by the number 14. That's Jayco 14 in one of the only 2 Porsches in competition right now. In fact, the only Porsche left in this race after the 982 took a very unexpected trip into the concrete barriers off the exit of turn 9. So the halfway mark of this race, we won't talk just yet. We'll hold our tongue on that one over whether or not we discuss the standings. We'll wait for all of our drivers to get out of the pit lane before we have a discussion over that. But it's definitely been a bit of a mixed bag race. We're back in a wet conditions there after an interlude of dry spells here in Zolder. The drivers were quite appreciative of having just a little moment in the sunlight before we're back into the wet and wild conditions that started this race off half an hour ago. ETE Giles right now, he is gunning for gold as it has been a masterful choice on strategy. He's took that very early leap to the pits. Right now, Chris MCK08 and Soviet Mario hold on to 2nd and 3rd. So Giles gunning for gold by the looks of things here. And the only other driver currently in that equation as exiting the pits goes the 81 and the 26. Giles will take 2nd, and he's done a very, very good job there. He's been playing chess whilst the rest of the grid has been playing checkers. That is very clever stuff. There's one thing Euro Titans will teach you. It's how to formulate a bulletproof strategy of attack. We see that widely on display. Oh, that's trouble! Hold on just a moment. That's trouble for Just Boris out through turn 1. The 777 may have caught him there as he was also finding himself a little bit short-footed on the exit of turn 1. But what on earth happened for Just Boris? He exits the pits in 4th. Was it just a spin on exit? There'll surely be an investigation into that. We'll have a look. Of course we'll have a look. But not right now. Out through turn 4 then. That is a bit of a way to start your second half of this race. And for Just Boris, he's going to be punching the air from inside that 999 Lamborghini. As you can see, feverishly trying to scrub heat back into those tyres to give himself the best possible look. He'll be gaining 3rd position. Make no mistake over that. With Giles in 2nd, right now still leading the charge of this race. White Doctor from the pit lane. So the race really now is on between our top 3. Drama erupts tenfold here in Zolder amidst crazy conditions on track. We've gone wet, dry, soaking wet. 27.5 minutes left to go then. Where does the penny drop in the fight for first? The 57 is creeping in fast. He's going to have to get off the jacks as soon as possible because Giles could lead this. And he does, as a matter of fact. So on the back of what has been one of the most well thought out strategies, this was very cunning stuff by ETE Giles. He leads this race with 27 minutes left to go, 20 laps in. He's took that right off the hands of White Doctor on what we said earlier on was a close to flawless performance. We did mention strategy be the only thing that would undo him today. And right now, you can see the mastermind behind it is ETE Giles. Now, to take a look back at Giles' last win, we'd have to take a look back into Season 7, when he was driving with Ford Performance, where in which he picked up 2 race wins, one in round 11 and one in the penultimate round at round 15. We take a look at the previous champions as well. You can see that Giles also finds his way to picking up some silverware as he won back in Season 5. This could be in 26.5 minutes off of the back of one of the most cheeky strategies I think I've ever seen, and one so well thought out. Could be Giles' first win in over half a season. As a matter of fact, it could be his first win in nearly over a season. I must say, he's really caught everyone off guard by that, but into the pits again. So it was a double stop. It was always going to be a double stop. So we've been sold an absolute blinder just as much as everyone else has. Never let them know your next move. That seems to be the modus operandi for ETE Giles in this race, as right now, he looked to have done all of that on dries. Can you believe that? Into the pits goes ETE Giles, retaking the lead then, would be the 54 of White Doctor. He's going to be furious with that. Trying to get a look at what tyres he was on there. They look pretty slick underneath. So yeah, he managed to do all of that on slicks. That is remarkable. Well, that is definitely kicked some of the wind out of our sails there. We're starting to get excited over the prospect of a potential new Giles win. His first since round 15 last season. Season 5's champion was definitely keeping all of us on our toes there. I think he was hoping that that strategy would have worked out, but with rain creeping back in, it's back into the story of 2, and it's the same 2 who started this race off on that front row. White Doctor and Just Boris. Now, despite whatever went on the exit of the pits there on the course of this stint, Boris has still been absolutely super glued to second position right now. You can see it's trouble for the 777 car. We're going to try and get on board with that. Looks to be issues for Hin Hin Pappy. Major damage and yellow flags right now for the Ferrari. And pardon me, that looks quite dire for him there. He can barely get the car turned around on his way to the pits. It's just crawling. It's a broken steering rack. Broken front aero. Looks like damage all along the side. The front aero's completely gone. Side aero's compromised. Rear aero's dragging and bent there. That is quite the tank slapper to have given him damage on that level. But somehow, by some stroke of blind luck, he's managed to rag that car back into the pit lane. That is going to be quite a monumental task to put that 777 back together. See here, Giles v Smiler. So Giles, who was on our prospect list for a potential race win today, has committed to that 2-stop strategy. Now he's back onto the wets, and he's not lost any of the momentum that he had over the course of that second stint. This is his third now, as he goes on the inside at Boulderberg Harshbelt at turn 8, then to turn 9 at the Jochen Rindt box. A drive-through penalty has just been dished out there to Shawnee Mack for infringements inside the pit lane. Actually, was it for infringements inside the pit lane? Because we saw him out on track. So no, it wouldn't have been that. It could have been for track limits then. Regardless, a drive-through penalty has set him further back from 18th. Right now, he's still provisionally last in this race. So no harm, no foul, but he's not going to be particularly happy being this far behind the competition. We're still on board with Giles then, off the back of what was a very exhilarating move through turn 8 on Smiler. Up in a 9th position, so he's not going to be complicit with finishing this just at the back of the top 10. You can see the kind of momentum he's pulling into this third stint of his performance with 22.5 minutes left to go. He'll be gunning for 8th position if Wishful can't find it in him to keep the ball rolling. Both of them having very exciting races indeed. I'd say measure of the two at the moment, though. You've got to give it to, if we can find him at the very least, that being, where is he? Wishful Winnings. He started plumb last in this race and sits in a confident top 10 right now. He's in 8th position, a nearly 10-second gap between himself and Blue Frog. All it would take is one slip up and he's up there in towards the charge of P7 and beyond. We'll be checking in then with the battle currently looking to emerge inside the top 5. Now we're going to try and catch on board here as we just quickly see a bit of moment of upset between Giles and Smiler on the exit of this very same corner we saw that overtake last lap. We want to get on board with what looks to be kicking off as a fight very, very soon. Now, this is right at the very back of our top 5. As a matter of fact, between 5th and 6th, there's a moment of upset there for the Aston. Speaking of Astons, here is the one of 2 in that fight for 5th position. Tyler Vermack finds himself in another defensive performance, this time up against Chris MCKO8 in the Ferrari. We've seen already he is not afraid to get his elbows out and go side by side in even the most narrow sections of the track, this being one of them, the Kleiner chicane at turn 5. Now out through turn 6. Entering the Turleman complex. You see, it is properly hammering it down now. Compared to where we started this race off at, this is actually worse conditions than when the lights first went green. Major rooster tailing being kicked up as well by the cars. Just incredible amounts of spray. So we'll stay on board with the perspective of Vermack for just a moment, so I'll be back in a second. So still on board with Tyler Vermack, and the number 94 continues to try and fend off Chris MCKO8. Now we're back into turn 8 here at Boulderberg Harschwald-Bocht. Does not get old saying that. It's probably been pronounced wrong several times over the course of this broadcast. You can see further up the road, things getting closer and closer in that contention for third. Now that's between Soviet and Elite Cassie. We'll be getting on with that in a moment's time. About half a second residing between the pair of them there on average. And that's seemingly the same kind of gap we've had for the majority of their fight for 5th between Vermack and Chris MCKO8. But now that is quickly starting to drop away as the conditions wear on. Aston Martin will be back into that premier advantage. They've got minus 14 kilos in balance of performance. As a matter of fact, we're going to have to cut away from this fight right here and now, as we can see side by side with Soviet Mario and Elite Cassie all the way out through turns 2 and 3. As we make our way to Lucien Bianchi box turn 4, this is where things could elevate into another side-by-side scrim between these two on their way down towards turn 5. It's not impossible to get 2 cars around this section, but it is by no accounts easy. See drivers now tiptoeing around that. Let's say for the Aston Martin that just plows directly over it like a Crusader tank. Insane stability from the V8 Vantage. It's an absolute battleship. So on with Cassie. We saw him for a moment's time there be side by side with Soviet. It's now 1.3 seconds between himself and the McLaren. He'll be hoping for another mistake in the near future, because that gap between himself and Vermack is closing slowly but surely, I should say. We've just seen what degree of control Aston Martin is able to give to its drivers with its myriad of wet weather packages here, and what that means is just an incredibly comfortable drive in the wet, where other drivers here on their setup seem to be tiptoeing and cautiously edging the car away around the track. Really doesn't seem to be any kind of hesitation from Aston So you can see that gap is halved in the time we've just been discussing the difference in performance. You can see he's just tiptoeing out of every corner in the BMW. Now, we know it's a bit tail happy when pushed beyond its extreme. And in conditions like this, of course, you're never going to be aiming exactly at 100%. This is more your 90% race. In conditions like these, you know you're going to have to sort of taper your performance and your expectations of what the car's capable of giving you today. For Aston Martin, though, it just seems like, okay, we can't give you 100%, but we can give you 99. Just sidestep it. That seems to be the difference here in machinery. You can see it's become now a difference of driver as to where positioning will lie. And strategy too, we must keep that into consideration as we were kept to the edge of our seats there, that Giles could have won this race. That's not to say that he can't, but it would take quite a series of unfortunate events to put him in the position. Right now, we're still watching the fight for 4th position as Vermaak is eyeing up Elite Cassie. We saw that step out of oversteer out through the Terlemenbocht complex on his way down towards turn 8. Now as we exit turn 9, Vermaak is getting closer and closer and closer. He's hunting him down with feral fervour in that Aston. This is the Aston Martin's bread and butter, though. It's where we get to see the most vigorous driving out of the Aston V8 Vantage. It is right at home in the worst of conditions. You can see he's just on him there. It's like he's standing still at the apex of the corner. Vermaak's just able to get all over him. And out in front of him, there he goes. Tyler Vermaak now puts himself side by side, and he seals the deal at turn 4 on Elite Cassie. Is the BMW going to be in the position to try and fight things back? We know it's got a very good run here down the opening, not the opening straights, down the back straights, I should say, to turn 5. BMW's always got decent punch in their stride, and sadly this time around it's just not enough for Elite Cassie. Vermaak then enters turn 7. On his trails there, Elite Cassie and Chris MCK. We could be in for a fight here, more realistically for 5th here, as Cassie continues to fall away from the Aston Martin of Tyler Vermaak. That is proper commitment in the drive, and the number 94. Proper conviction in the way he governs the Aston around the track right now. Chris MCK08 is now next in line to try and step in front of Elite Cassie. Now we know Cassie's a great driver, but it seems that it's this time around machinery letting him down. In dry conditions, we know he can deliver on a solid performance, but right now he is incredibly vulnerable. BMW has struggled notoriously on ACC in wet conditions. It's never really been their day, and with the track looking more and more like a river at the time of recording, it's not looking to get any better right now. As a matter of fact, with that kind of move, it very nearly could have gone very sour. I think he'll be lucky to just exit that corner in P6. As we saw there, he had to sidestep the move at the very last second. It was proper commitment into the corner by Chris MCK08. Some could argue that was perhaps a little bit reckless. You can see there was a moment where he was just sliding into it. Cassie had to step out of that, otherwise it would have been an incident. Now down to 6th. It's not been the best second half, all things considered, for Cassie. For Chris MCK08, he's laughing though. Easy position up into 5th there. Just licked the stamp and sent it. Now all he's got to do is try and reel in 2.7 seconds to Vermaak. The rest is golden. See here, Grizz and Abok in 13th and 14th. Audi versus Ferrari potentially on the horizon here. 13 minutes left to go then. Conditions are only getting worse and worse. In 8th position right now is easily our pick for driver of the day. Even before the checkered flag flies here, that has really been a showstopper by Wishful Winning. So put himself inside the top 10 from the back of the grid. He has surfed adversity of all shapes and varieties there to put himself in that position. It was proper conviction by the 23. Having another look around the field here. Giles with Jaco for company down through turn 8 is a ways away from challenging Wishful for position here with 12.5, just under as a matter of fact, 12.5 minutes left to go in this race. From 9th position, he's got to make a 9.2 second gap, which has been floating in and around the 9 and 8.9 second mark for some time. Soviet Mario has had an absolute world-class drive here. He started in that second row, has made true on his opportunity to see the podium. Frankly, you couldn't have asked for a better drive today there. Though it may only be one position he's arguing over from 4th to 3rd, he has really had to go through the ringer to get it. And he has kept it absolutely planted. But it may not be over yet. You can see that the gap between himself and Vermaak, the original P3 holder, is closing. Slowly, but more reassuringly, surely. You see 0.7 of a second, the dividing factor for the last of our top 10 here. Battle of the heavyweight cars yet again. Aston Martin versus Mercedes. Though I'd say that's a bit of an apt observation, given that BMW and Ford are your arguable heavyweights coming into this round. Of course, bringing back up balance of performance. It's Mercedes with only 12 kilos on board to deal with today. They're not the heaviest ones in class. That honour going to BMW and Ford, 13 and 20. But Aston has really, since that weight reduction package here for Zolder, found a proper spring in their step. Just Boris then, second at the moment. In terms of the gap between himself and Soviet Mario, 9.2 seconds. If he keeps this pace going here just to the checkered flag, he'll be happy to pick up another front row finish. Though he'll be gunning for multiple race wins in a row. It'll take a lot now to put the 54 out of commission. So Boris may not see that top step of the podium. That is a realistic outcome with 10.5 minutes left to go. But that is not going to stop him on his pursuit for the championship, as he'll be gaining even more points. We saw him jump 4 positions from round 5 to today. He could jump even more than that from round 5 to next week. Back onto our fight then for the top 10. Twiglet v Smiler. And we'll stay on board with these two here, looking to give us some entertainment from the back of the top 10 as we head down towards turn 1. 10 minutes left to go. It is looking a bit treacherous out there on the waters that is turn 1. You can see their visibility is incredibly stunted, as too is available grip. These two having to wrestle their cars out of turn 3, now to turn 4. Out through the Kleiner chicane. You can see it's where the Mercedes tends to shine here. It's just on that run uphill towards turn 6, but he's had to back off massively. We saw that degree of hesitation there. Something was awry on our way to turn 6 as we enter the turn 7 complex at Terlemenbocht. Twiglet's just going to have to hope he can stay in the wake here of the Aston in front of him if he looks to be getting a hopes here at a top 10 finish. The time is closing down rather quickly now. Did see momentary trouble there for the number 4 out of turn 1. That was Shawnee Mack, now in between the 61 and the 23. On our way down towards turn 10, White Doctor, our leading car, is only 7 seconds away from the battle on screen here. So that really goes away to describe just the gap he's been able to pull over the course of this race. That is almost akin to what we saw out of Boris last season. One second the gap between them at the moment as they make their way to turn 2. But going very wide there. We saw almost immediately things start to drop away for the Mercedes. We'll be catching back up with them later on towards the checkered flag. We just check in here with last season's champion, Just Boris. Bear in mind, he's on championship defence here, and he's in 4th in the championship. We'll be looking for a top 3 by the end of this round as we head over to Snetterton next week for our second of our 3, I should say, available sprint rounds this championship. And this has definitely not been the start he's been hoping for, but getting back towards the front row has always been the objective, and picking up 2 race wins this season is nothing to scoff at all. I would not say by any stretch of the imagination that he's out of it, just saying that it's going to be quite the fight to even put himself in the position for it, given what went on over the course of the opening couple of races, where he picked up, yes, 1 race win. He's also had 2 DNFs this season. It's a lot to take in, really. It is a lot to take in, and that drop of points. Even getting to the checkered flag in last will pick you up points, as I believe we have points accounting for the top, I think, about 20 or 30 positions. So just getting to the line is enough in some instances to keep yourself in it. But he's done a very good job then to get from 8th to 4th. Where can he elevate that beyond in the next 7 minutes of the championship standings? See here, Smiler and Twiglet. Now the other half of these two fighting. It's the leading Aston Martin of this two-car battle. You can see just how dire things are looking out through turn 1, but the Aston is just able to command its way through. It's had very little issues on its way. Oh, I should not have spoken too soon. What a slide. Did he drop port side anchor for that one? That was an insane slide by these monstrously large GT3s. Now, they're very, very wide for even their own classification. Even cars like the Ferrari 296 and the Corvette C8 will be looking at that and they'll be thinking, oh, jeez. That is quite a slide then by Smiler. He's done very well to hold on to that one. We have Nico in chat asking, what position is Wishful Winnings? We'd be happy to find out if we go and look for them there. I think they are, as a matter of fact, yes, in 8th position and closing in on what looks to be trouble for Elite Cassie. On his exit there of turn 10, loses the ground out to Blue Frog, who's now up to 6th. Trouble between the pair of them, and behind we can see that Giles is stuck in amongst traffic there with the 777, and the number 4 will stay on board with Wishful Winnings, who looks to be arriving very soon on what looks to be a crime scene going on between 6 and 7. It has been a brilliant, brilliant drive by this one. Really, you got to hand it to him. Even if he finishes here, that is still an achievement in its own right. Started in 21st, now in 8th. Could even be 2 free positions on the horizon. Now, I don't want to get too hopeful about the situation here. It is still wishful thinkings for Wishful Winnings, hence the name. But on his way down towards turn 5, the opportunity for him to take extra positions here, especially with the floundering performance of the BMW in front, is still quite rich on the table for the 23. Their performance has really, had it not been for the fact they started at the back, I would definitely see them in the position of fight for a podium today. They have had that iron about them in this drive today. Proper gumption in the way they've been commanding the Ferrari around the track. And they've just made such light work. They've been carving through the grid like a hot knife through butter. And with 4.5 minutes left to go, there's still pickings available here for Wishful Winnings. Elite Cassie, try as he may, is really, really having to force that BMW into capitulation at every single corner. The machine is now fighting him back. Checking around the grid here, we can see the Blue Frog, who got up and ahead of Cassie on the last lap, has took the baton and ran with it. He's 9.3 seconds from a top 5 finish, but he'll be happy with 6th at the moment, especially given how against the ropes Ford has been with 20 kilos on board in balance and performance ballast. He's not going to be scoffing at a top 6, though obviously everyone wants more. There's only so much to give. There's trouble for the 98. We'll just quickly catch on board there with Elite Cassie. Had trouble out through turn 1, now drops behind Giles and Wishful Winnings to make 9th position. He is going to be sorely, sorely frustrated with that. Oh my word, did you see that behind? That was the 777 in at the wall. Hin Pappy could be out of this race here. Very nearly collected Shawnee Mack with him. Let's get a look at that on the replay. As we were watching on board with Cassie there just after his problems at turn 1. This is out through turn 3 there, angling into the wall. We didn't get to see the moment of impact, but we got to see the aftermath. Really, that is quite a shocker for him there. This late on in the race, only but mere laps left in it. Still on board with 2nd position at the moment. You can see the gap on your left-hand side there. The triangle just heading down into turn 5. The number 54 above it, that represents the race leader, that being White Doctor. And this is where Just Boris is on the track, indicated by the red dot with the 999. He's only just heading through turn 3. Has Boris met his match? Or has it been a gamble not worth taking? We can see now trouble for the 7. That's Boy Shay out through turn 4. Very nearly collected Just Boris on his way around there. Same story for the cars in front of him, VSR Grizz and VSR Abok. It seems that now the condition has become unbearable for some. So we've seen a sort of overspill of accidents today for plenty of different drivers across the field. 2 minutes left to go. We're about a lap and a half left in it here for this one, leading the charge. White Doctor looks to pick up his second career win this series, opening the gap even further for his tenure of Season 8, further in line for the look at the championship this season on an almost mirror match of the kind of dominant performance that we got so early on last season from Just Boris. We're seeing the genesis here of a new champion here in VSR Phoenix, and what a pleasure it has been to observe firsthand. 1.5 minutes left to go then. I think it may just be one more lap then after this one gone. So let's get a look around the field here. Let's see what the status quo is like inside the top 10. Right now, this is from 4th position as making up the last of the podiums right now. Just Boris and Soviet Mario. Just outside the podium then is Tyler Vermack. He's not going to be particularly happy, but he's fought diligently there, and strategy's just not been to his side. He'll come home, by the looks of it, with 4th position, unless something untoward happens to the car in 3rd right now. The 26 of Soviet Mario, who has got the better of his fellow second-row compatriot to make 3rd position. Chris MCK08's behind him to make that top 5. As we tick over into the last couple of laps here, we're just looking to see if there are any battles, or if it's now more a battle for survival, more so than with any other driver on the track. We can see, though, Abok and, as a matter of fact, Grizz very close to one another, as Just Boris is been given the blue flags to try and get on by here in the closing moments of this race. Now, Grizz has to cut Turleman. Abok's not going to be happy with that one. And Abok there subsides. He knows Grizz is just too far ahead now for him to care at this point. It would take something seriously wrong to happen to the Audi now. Wishful Winnings then looks to take home 7th position. Now that is really quite special for him today. That is a brilliant performance. To go from the last of the field there to 7th. That's much akin to what we saw, I think it was in the Nürburgring Endurance round in Season 7 out of Just Boris, where he had a pretty good charge from the back of the field. Now, he voluntarily did that. I don't know what the circumstances are surrounding what went on with Wishful Winnings. We see here Boris crossing the line there, not to the checkered flag, though. This is onto his last lap of today's race, and it looks to be second at the very best of it for last season's champion. He won both of the Zolder rounds last season, but looks to take home only silver in today's race. But who's gunning for gold? Why, it's no more than the 54 entering the Turn 7 complex at the moment. White Doctor on the precipice of his 2nd career win in Season 8. Aston Martin's 2nd and multiple time win in over a season here in VSR Phoenix. White Doctor is only a few corners away from the end of the road here in round 6, from the top of those podium steps. Running things down to the very last there, conquering the wet and wild conditions that Zolder has thrown in his direction. He has gone unparalleled here for his 2nd win today. The checkered flag flies. Aston Martin's number 54. White Doctor wins in Zolder in an astronomical performance then. He has braved what is functionally the 7 seas here in Zolder on what is absolutely flooded conditions. And he has given it absolutely everything for that win today. Very well done. 2nd in this season there. And I assume by the looks of things, with the momentum he's carried over the course of the last 6 rounds, 2 of many. Just Boris then will try and catch on board with him as he gets to the line. I think we may just be a little too late on that one. Just crossing the line there. Just Boris takes home 2nd. And then 3rd for Soviet Mario. Very well done to get onto the podium there. Tyler Vermack will take home 4th. Looking around the field, Chris MCK08's not too far away there. Vermack just crossing the line for 4th. Chris MCK08 to the line to round out our top 5. Down towards the line, following on his trails there. Blue Frog in 6th. In the number 61. It looks to be potentially all the way to the line here between 2 drivers, but leading that charge from 7th is our driver of the day, Wishful Winnings, in the number 23 Ferrari. Started last, up to 7th. ETE Giles there taking home the fastest lap off of that cunning 2-stop strategy, finishes inside the top 10. Elite Cassie, on thoughts of what could have been today, had to wrestle his machine through thick and through thin. Sadly, it couldn't give him the result he wanted today amidst the wet and wild conditions in Zolder. He'll be 9th as he crosses the line. Still more points to consider on the horizon, but not the result he was gunning for today. Smiler finishing 10th, Twiglet in 11th, Tommy Johansson 12th, Grizz 13th, Abok 14th, Boyshay in 15th. Down the line there, Jayco 16th, Hin Pappy 17th, Shawnee Mac in 18th. DNFs by Rafing, Charlie Smithy and Funky Fish. That's the end of the line then on a bit of a brisk ending here in Zolder. What an interesting set of conditions we had to play against today. And what a result by White Doctor. Absolutely perfect tacticianry there. Mastery of one's own vehicle. The 54 seemed all but unfazed for the entire hour of racing. Come rain or shine, that was imperial stuff by the Aston Martin. Boris will take home another podium there, but look at the gap. That is a precedent being sent to last season's champion that your run in the limelight here could be over. 31.8 seconds is jaw-dropping. We saw that in the other way round for most of the grid all of Season 7. Are the cracks starting to show then? This is going to make for what appears to be a very exciting second half of the championship, which we'll be getting into come Wednesday next week when we head to Snetterton and bringing up that calendar once again. Let's get a look here. We'll be in Snetterton for the second of our 3 sprint rounds in this championship season for rounds 7 and 8 on the 4th of June, where we get just past the midway mark of the championship. Then Monza the week after, Paul Ricard the week after that, to Ricardo Tormo, otherwise the Valencia circuit for rounds 11 and 12 for the final sprint round of the season before we're back into the hour-long format like you've seen today at Barcelona on the 2nd of July and Kyalami on the 9th of July. Back where it all started last season is the final resting point in Season 8, and it's going to be a very dramatic one. That was an exciting race, no less, and plenty of twists and turns, plenty of drama, and plenty to go away with. And a very exciting finish then to the line by quite a few there. We got to see inside that second gap for the fight of 10th position between Smiler and Twiglet. It actually shifted back in the direction of the Aston. After all things said and done, that's all from us though on TRTN. What an exciting race that was indeed. We hope you enjoyed watching. We'll be with you if you're tuning in for VSR Phoenix. We'll be with you next Wednesday if you're tuning in for anything else. We do have announcements coming up about that if you're tuned in to the NLRL server. That's all from us, though, here on TRTN. We'll be back with you next Wednesday. Till then, take care.